we have a quorum, and let's continue. So let's start with the approval of the agenda. I would like a motion to approve the agenda. We approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Whoa. Oh, that works, isn't it? Okay, there is one item. The Western Slope Conservation Center has asked if they could be moved to the end at item number 14. With that amendment to the agenda. Oh, we have to hit the button on the side, on the right side. There's a power button. Okay. We have an amendment to the agenda to move them down to the bottom.
I'd like to make a motion to remove the Conservation Center item to the end of the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay. All right. All in favor of the amendment to the agenda? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, then approval of the agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We can move on. We have an agenda. All right. Announcements. I don't have any announcements. Does anybody else have any announcements? Nope. Okay, then next is recognition of visitors and guests. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Yes. State your name, please.
Tom Atkinson of 51 Hamburg, and I'm the president of Mountain Harvest Creative, which is the nonprofit that puts on Mountain Harvest Festival. And I'm here to tell you that I'm disappointed, but yesterday the board took a vote, and we are not going to hold Mountain Harvest Festival this year. Okay. We discussed a number of ways to try to do it or think about that, but with the increased cases of the virus that seem to be exploding around the country, maybe not necessarily new right now, but around the country, it was the opinion of the board that we didn't want to take a chance on bringing that infection to others, and looking at the governor's, I can't remember what he's calling it right now, for large gatherings, it seems awfully restricted for what we would have to do to, at this point in time, I guess they have 150 people. And so I wanted to let you all know that before we actually make a public announcement about it. We will be putting out a notice about this to the public. But I wanted you all to know that map, and this decision was just made yesterday.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Well, so are we. There's some real concern for health, especially among some of the board members who have had some issues in this last year, and the fear of bringing that infection to someone really kind of was a major factor of the decision. Okay?
Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you. See ya.
Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to recognition of our former mayor. So Charles served on the Board of Trustees for 2 years, and then was elected and served as our
you very much. Spending the time that I did, 6 years on board, it wasn't always easy, but it was always rewarding. And it was a pleasure to work with the folks that are here in this room. That made life a lot easier. Bottom line is, I learned a lot, and truly is one of the precious experiences in my life. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes, very nice.
We have an addition. This is not your retirement. Even though it's an Edward Jones on.
Oh, okay.
It's the only one I could find that would fit the
That would be the word. Thank you very much. That is very much.
And we have a special gift for you that we'd like you to open.
Yeah, do that. I want to make a gift. I like that one. I probably use that once or twice during the meetings, but I try to refrain from using that. But yes, thank you very much. That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Now we can see about Josh over here.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Charles,
Thank you.
show us this George.
Ah,
What did it say?
That's good. Well, I get in trouble when I use that voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for everything that you've done for him. All right, next on the agenda is an executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Mayor, I move that we go into executive session for a conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS Section 24-6-4024B. Specific to the case of Aaron Pace, v. the town of Paonia, and the town attorney's professional services agreement.
Okay, do I have a second on that motion? All right, we have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, we are into executive session. I'm proposing we go back to the big point.
Word, Mr. Lord.
My microphone doesn't work. We have completed the river project for the sewer line crossing. That has been completed. Engineer signed off on it, and it turned out really nice. Hopefully it'll last a lot longer than the first one did. The Minnesota Creek sewer line project should be completed by the end of this week. They got one section completed, and they're just tidying up the second section of the creek above the sewer line for that one. The pipe has been delivered for the Paonia ditch crossing behind the town office here, so I'm still working on getting two other bids for that project. I've got one so far, just waiting on two others to get here to move that forward. We are spilling about 2,000 gallons a day at the 2 million still, and about 43,000 gallons at the 1 million. I have started working with Chris from Brownsville on the control system for the 1 million. hopefully, once they get everything completed, they can have it done. He's thinking of probably 2 to 2.5 months to get everything completed on that project. I have been working on the sidewalk list, trying to figure out what sidewalks we can do this year. So that's moving forward. Did get a bid for that one. And then I requested 2 others, and both of those guys were too busy on ditch projects that they didn't want to bid it. But they did tell me if they did bid it, it would be really high, so it worked out pretty good. I think we got a pretty decent price on the sidewalk bids. And that's all I've got, unless you guys have any questions.
Okay, any questions for, yes, Bill?
I noticed that there's, mains to the Grand Avenue here, all the lines are gone off the middle of the street. Are you making plans to paint or to repaint that?
I have not made any plans at this time to repaint it. The company that does the design on Montrose, I can give him a call and get a bid on getting the lines painted again. For that.
Yeah, I think that we should take a look at that anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Dave?
2 questions. I was wondering if we've determined who's going to pay for that ditch culvert over here?
I ordered the pipe, Corinne and I are still working on trying to talk with the ditch company and figure out if there's going to be a cost share.
Okay, and the second question is on the, let's see, the back of Apple Valley Park. I believe it's the east bank. It's near the back. There's a huge bunch of water coming down that hill that seeps through the walking trail and some of the stations that happen back there. And I wonder if we know the source of that water.
I will have to take a better look at it. I haven't noticed it, but I haven't been in the back of the park, and my guys haven't said anything to me, so I'll take a look at that.
Any other questions? Yes.
So, one request, and this may come with the updates to our water system, but I was wondering if it would be possible to get something in writing month over month on what we're spilling, what we're treating, so that we can track trends a little more easily.
We are working on that. We do have a Excel spreadsheet that we put what we produce, what we spill, and stuff. It's been a couple 6 months since it's been updated, but I can get it updated and get it to everybody.
Okay, yeah, if we could get monthly updates, that would be great, especially when we're looking at drought to help make decisions. And then you had mentioned at the June 9th meeting that you were working on an updated inventory system. Any progress on that?
For our supplies,
Mm-hmm.
we are working on it. I haven't forgot about it, but we're trying to get things cleaned up a little bit to where it's easier for us to be able to track it a little easier.
Okay. And the Springline project, was that one of the ones that you mentioned? I didn't make the connection.
We have fixed multiple different leaks throughout the Springline system.
Okay.
We haven't got to the other side of the hill to do the big Springline project. That's over on clear on the other side of the old spring. That's the one that we have 1,600 foot of pipe to put in that.
Okay,
We
thank
have
you.
not done that.
Okay, any more questions from the board? Okay, hearing, seeing none. Yes, Christine, would you stand and state your name? Thank you.
Price Road. I was wondering about the watering of the town park. Is that on the Stewart ditch?
Yes, ma'am.
Like that's complete on the Stewart ditch?
All of the parks except for Leeds and Polis. Leeds Park is not on ditch water yet, and Polis Park is not on ditch water.
And is that an automated system that you have at the town park?
No,
No.
no, you have to manually put sprinklers in as well.
But you have a watering schedule set?
Yes, there is a schedule set.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I just wanted to point out, I was noticing that the town park looks a little stressed, dryness. And, if we're entering into a drought season here, but we still have water in the ditch, I think it's important to get that water in the park so those trees, especially, lawn can recover pretty quickly. But drought can affect trees and it's not going to show up for a year or 2 or 3. And stress trees can start dying or die back or insect problems. So if we're going into a drought season here, which it looks like we will because the Stewart ditch is probably going to be cut back too. While we have the water, I think it's really important to get that park watered and those trees healthy and a little late, but just to make sure that it is getting adequate water and care at this point in time would be important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. All right. Let's move on to the police report. Chief Ferguson.
I'm very excited to announce that I've hired a new officer today. His name is Brian Berger. He is fresh out of the academy and will require the full 15-week FTO program. Brian did start this morning with paperwork and we'll start the FTO portion of it tomorrow night. And then we'll end up swearing him in on the next board meeting so that way he's all sworn in and done. The Dulles County law enforcement agencies have started planning on going forward with Back to Badge initiative for November. Hopefully the next meeting I will be asking for the board's support to make sure that everybody's still on board to go forward with the initiative. I did hear back from our potential new dog kennel. There is some agreements that we're going through. I need to speak with Mr. Bowe later and ask a couple of questions of him whenever I get a chance. And for now, that's it.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Tammy.
I did notice, she's like, wow.
There's a volume button.
Is there?
It's on the left side, Tammy.
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, here it's cranked up, okay. So Chief Ferguson, I noticed in the police report that there was 26 code enforcements with virtually all of them written warnings and then 9 marijuana. Are those all basically for the same thing or are?
No, code enforcement's usually weeds or trees or junk. And then the marijuana is compliance checks throughout town to make sure that people are growing the amount and have it locked and enclosed.
So after the written warning, what do they have, a couple weeks and then?
So generally with the code enforcement, they give them 20 days. After that 20 days, they need to, if they don't comply, not for the marijuana, but for the code enforcement portion of it, after 20 days, if they don't comply, then they receive a summons into court, and then they'll have to appear in court to let the judge know why they have not complied with the written warning. For the marijuana, they have 10 days. We're usually pretty easy about it. We just need to make sure that they have all 4 sides of roof and some way to lock the door so that way people can't get into it.
Thank you.
Yes, Karen.
I noticed there were a lot of information things on the police report. Is that somebody asked the police for information, the police is out getting it? What is that?
So a lot of those information ones come from the care center, and they have to statutorily report things. They're not necessarily a crime, so we mark them down as an information report, so that way we have a log of them.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I remember when Back to Badge was happening last year, it was hard to support because there wasn't much notice on the public hearing, and I know I couldn't show up because I was out of town, so when you go to that meeting, if you could please make sure that we have way advance notice and can really show support for that. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, yes, Suzanne.
Suzanne Watson. So I was wondering, when you do the marijuana checks, is it just because people have registered with the town? Are you droning people's property yet?
No, we have not used the drone.
Then what's going on with your drone?
It's still sitting in a box upstairs.
Okay.
I don't have a pilot for it. The one that was going to go and get certified resigned. And so we've never had a pilot for it. We've had it up one time for a search and rescue, and then one time prior to that, just so he could learn how to do it. But at this point in time, it's sitting upstairs in a box, waiting for a pilot.
Okay. Thanks.
So
All right.
the marijuana ones are ones that you can actually see. They're either popping over the vents or, something like that, to where you could actually visually see them.
Okay.
Okay, there are no other questions or comments? Okay, then let's move on with the attorney report. Bo?
Thank you, Mayor. Most of what we worked on for the town this month was included in the packet. We provided an updated fence ordinance that's later on the agenda for review. Also put together a draft ordinance with respect to the appointment of officers. We talked about briefly the U.S. District Court case of Pace versus the town of Paonia. Corinne, Travis, and I will be meeting sometime, hopefully this week, to discuss the Riverbank subdivision process. And then lastly, and probably most importantly for the town, or for me, is that I will be departing from David Reed's office at the end of the month. With that, the town, as the client, has 3 available options. It can stick with the responsible attorney for the file, which has been me since the appointment occurred. It can stick with the firm, which is David Reed's office, or it could seek outside legal counsel. With that, I'd like to reiterate that I absolutely want to continue to serve as legal counsel for the town. And for the remainder of 2020, I would propose a professional services agreement that mirrors the one that's in place now. And I would like to discuss with finance and with the town administrator a fixed price contract for 2021.
Thank you. Any questions for the town attorney? Seeing none, anything from the audience? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on with regular business. Number 5, resolution 2020-13 to be determined, appointment of officers. This was brought up several meetings ago as to whether we should appoint officers every 2 years after the election or not. The code is not completely clear on the subject, and so we have chosen to go ahead and write language which will define this so that there won't be a question on it in the future. Can I get a motion on the table to accept this?
I don't we approve the ordinance as it is.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Yes, Michelle.
Mayor Beckman, I just had a comment. I think we're on item 5 on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I believe from the second that's the actual appointment of officers and the ordinance is further down.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. I was wrong. All right. Scrolling down. Okay, so the resolution is to appoint the officers. I will go ahead and read this. Whereas CRS 31-4-304 provides that after each regular election, Board of Trustees shall appoint a clerk, treasurer, and town attorney. And whereas CRS 31-10-105 provides that the governing body shall appoint a municipal judge for a specific term not less than 2 years and may be reappointed for a subsequent term. And whereas the Paonia Municipal Code, Chapter 2, Article 3, Section 2-3-10 requires the appointment of officers by a vote of the Board of Trustees, and whereas the Board of Trustees of the Town of Paonia, Colorado is required to appoint officers to carry on the business of the town, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Town of Paonia, Colorado, that the following persons are appointed: Treasurer Ross King, Town Clerk J. Corinne Ferguson, Town Attorney Bo James Nerlin, Municipal Judge Julie Huffman. So we need a motion to accept the resolution.
I move that we approve that one.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, since we're in the discussion about the attorney, wouldn't it make sense that we just have that appointment next time rather than this time, because we have a decision going on now, and if we make a decision today, it implies that our decision's already been made.
I don't know. Is there a reason why we should not do that?
Sorry, I pushed my button too fast and it turns people off after so many microphones are on. Of course, I'm not an attorney, but my opinion would be, since we're already, we're establishing that the requirement is that the appointments would follow the regular election every 2 years, and there is a statutory requirement to do that within so many days, that by appointing, that continues and carries on, Bo as the acting attorney while the town considers the alternative in the long run, but yeah.
Okay, Bo?
Let me just say that I absolutely would serve at the pleasure of the board. So in the event that the trustees made a decision to not move forward with me serving as the town attorney, I would resign that appointment. So.
That helps.
Okay, any other? Okay, any comments from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
So when are they going to be sworn in once you do your appointment? Don't they have to take their oath of office to be an official, like a judge, for instance?
Okay, yes, they do.
Yeah. Normally required that was done at a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get the swearing in done. It does need to be done under the statute. I think what we wanted to do is get the resolution and the ordinance in place before the board first.
Okay, so probably at the next meeting.
Okay. Can I just say, because you can appoint them by resolution, but technically they're not in a position, which speaks to Dave's question, because they have to be sworn in to take the oath of office before they can be officially recognized as filling that position. So technically, Bo Nerlin, for instance, you can pass in the resolution to appoint him tonight, but he's not technically sworn in at this point. So I'd just like to,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right. Having noted that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of Resolution 2020-13, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that resolution passes. All right, so since we're back to, we can only have 2 microphones on at a time, the third one goes on and it cuts off. I am going to leave mine on. When you finish talking, would you please turn yours off? Thank you. All right, let's move on to the skate park update. Do you have that, Corinne?
So supplied in the packet was the requested information, having with Travis and Public Works on what the town could offer in in-kind donations and what the approximate cost for that in-kind would be. The second item on there is the contribution, which is an actual dollar contribution for the I apologize, Dave. I forgot to take my mask off. For the installation of the barrier fencing, contemplating, of course, that the barrier fencing would be similar to that which is already used within the town park. I did note a couple of concerns that are currently under investigation, and I have spoken with Mr. Canode about as well.
And so he is aware that we're looking into this, and that is the cost of continuing liability insurance for a municipally owned skate park if it was no longer carried under insurance with the Pool Park and Recreation District or managed by the Pool Park and Recreation District. That is potentially a concern that the Pool Park and Rec will not continue to provide any maintenance or upkeep for the skate park following the rehabilitation and upgrade. Also, the cost for ongoing maintenance and upkeep of a completed skate park upgrade. I have reached out to Cedar Ridge and received some information back today on costs and upkeep maintenance. They have a large issue there with a lot of vandalism at the skate park, and so we're going to gather all of that data and bring that back, and I believe Mr. Canogue will be in attendance at the next meeting with a letter of recommendation for the board.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, Dave.
I appreciate that it's forward-looking, saying what are the possible costs down the road, but what I don't see on the list here that is a little hard to guess is, like, for instance, how many 100 feet of fence do we need? How many hours will this operator be? You know, those kind of things. It's really hard to figure out at this stage, but at least some wood against the wall, because I mean, for $100 an hour, it starts adding up a lot. And so I think that'd be a better estimate if we could at least try to get what we think it might be.
The problem is, if you recall when Mr. Canogue was here, he doesn't have that plan. Right. And so, is it a plan of just doing a little bit of upgrade on the existing? We could do that. We could get an idea of what that, for that size, what the fence would be. And we could estimate the fence cost for the idea of the installation of an entire new system. But without a plan and having no experience at the administrative level or public works with the installation of an above ground and swimming pool style skate park, we'd be very hard pressed to provide any kind of even somewhat accurate hour or numbers for that.
Yes, Mayor. I'm wondering if we could at least then say this is the maximum amount of skid steer time we're willing to give. This is the maximum amount of roller, water truck. This is the dollar amount we're willing to go up to. Would I think be more helpful for me to make a decision, and then he can take that to wherever he needs to go by saying I have a matching of this amount from the town. But I'm uncomfortable just saying we need a skid steer or we need these other things. I think we need to put some kind of limit on it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
This is just an update on potential costs. It's not anything that we're voting on. There's nothing to do at this particular time.
Correct.
Michelle?
Madam Mayor, I agree with Trustee Knudsen's comments, and I wonder if we could either have a cap on the total contribution, or if we're able to provide a better estimate with some assumptions, make it clear that that estimate is contingent on those assumptions happening. So we can provide this in-kind service, assuming that the skate park will be in the same location and will be constructed in this manner and things like that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Corinne will communicate those things to Jane. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the intent to participate in the November coordinated election. Oh dear. I've lost my place, I am sorry.
In the packet, it's going to be, if you're looking at the bottom left-hand page number, it starts on page 39.
Okay, thank you. My computer is not being helpful tonight. So as I recall, and please correct me while I still scroll like crazy, That this, all we're saying is that we wish to, we're making a statement that we are going to take part in the election. It's just stating intent to provide a referred ballot measure in the November election. There's no financial requirement until the agreement is completed and the language submitted to the county. So we need a motion for this, correct?
That's correct. We need to meet the July 24th requirement that the board take formal action of their intent to participate in the November election.
Okay, can I get a motion to that effect?
Ms. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we take formal action tonight to participate in the election that's coming up this November.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Just basically gives us the opportunity to be able to put the marijuana thing on the ballot and discuss it and to decide what the wording is going to be and whether it's one or two initiatives or what it's going to be. But we can see the costs of that fairly soon before we make a final decision too, so.
Any other discussion? Yes, Michelle?
I just want to add that the GAPS committee has reviewed, or has prepared draft language for whether we're doing one or two questions. We have options for both, and those are with Attorney Nerlin for review, and I expect that we'll have those for board review at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, seeing none from the board, public, Suzanne?
I had a question, for perhaps the chief of police. Is this only for the marijuana question, or are you putting back the badge on the ballot too?
We don't put back badge on the ballot. I believe it is the combined police and marshal services that puts that on the ballot.
So
ours is only the marijuana question.
Okay, so we're not paying for it to put that badge on the ballot?
Well, I'm sure we carry a small piece of it. We don't at all?
No, we didn't have to last year, and it hasn't been mentioned or anything this year for any costs or anything that I know of yet.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Let's move on to the ClearGov financial management software. Cindy, I believe this one is your baby.
So you guys had been asking, a couple of you had asked recently and had heard some information about this ClearGov. When I had looked at it before, had been designed for larger communities. However, in June, they came out with a new product that is designed for small communities. And after sitting through their presentation, which I'll be honest, I was doing because I was asked, not because I thought that it would be helpful. But after their presentation, it was very impressive. It does a lot of things that you guys have been asking for. On the other side, though, it is expensive. It will take historical data and put that I send them a file and they have an upload, and I can upload it as many times as we want to. I asked them if I could do it daily, and they said if you find it's necessary. It has a lot of nice features. It has a lot of nice, you can put pictures in, you can put graphs in. They have pre-made graphs from the data that they import. I have to say, it's very impressive, and it does a lot of things. It will provide a lot of information, it is interactive so that when we load it on the website, the public can go in and play with it. They can go and when you put the arrow over, it gives more information on each thing in the graph. Like I said, it loads our history, it will have all the information that's currently in our budget. I'll be able to cut and paste that in there, and then I don't have to do that every year. It'll just be there. I can change pictures as I desire, which is what I do each year. It also has the dashboard that you guys have been asking for, and it also has a capital projects section where there's a form, and each person can fill out the form. You can even take photos and include photos in the capital part. I think that's it. I'll just take questions.
All right, questions for Cindy? Go, Dave.
It's not questions, it's a bunch of comments, because this came up when we were all being trained by the Colorado Municipal League, and they had orientation for the trustees, and they highly recommended this software. I looked through a couple of the videos, and I encourage the public to go to cleargov.com and to look at some of the training videos, because to me, it is a huge answer to transparency. You can drill down on all the charts and graphs and go into like individual checks we've written and see where that money is exactly going in every single department. I think it's such a handy tool, and it's so user-friendly. It also allows for public comments as you go through. So if someone wants to ask a question, that can be done through that software while they're looking at it. And so if you're kind of tired of trying to wade through all these spreadsheets like this, which to me is really hard. I'm on the finance committee, I've been looking at budgets for years. That's why we've been asking for dashboards, so you can see at a glance, pie charts, bar charts, things like that, that make it more manageable and easy to understand. And I think that can give the public an idea of where our money's going. It is expensive. I'm a little concerned whether we can meet the time frames. They have a deadline, the 17th, for getting our information in, if we're going to get it done by August. They have, I don't know how much they raise their rates, their annual fees each year. I have a question about that, but I was really impressed in looking at the videos and reading the information. So I just want to make those comments in support of Cindy.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments?
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that it would also save time and money on the other end, once we add this thing, in the annual preparation of the budget and annual preparation of our annual report at the end of the year. This has got to save hours and hours and hours of work.
Thank you, Karen. Other questions, comments? Michelle?
Yeah, I'd also like to speak in support of this. I think it's extremely impressive, and I appreciate Ms. Jones taking the time to review it. I do have a couple of questions for Ms. Jones. I'm curious how you feel about all the different modules that are provided, and whether staff has the capacity to take full advantage of those tools.
I think that they have 3 different modules at this time. I'm only recommending 2. We're not in a position to be using the 3rd one, but I do think that we would get a lot of benefit out of the digital budget book, and then the capital piece and the dashboard piece are the pieces that you've been asking for recently. So I think that those two modules are the ones that will give you what you've been asking for.
Thank you.
And also, to answer, Dave mentioned, by doing this, I have requested that if we lock it in, that they lock in for the price for 5 years. So this price is the price for the next 5 years. That's the longest that they would go. They had a 3 and a 5, and I'm thinking, well, if we're going, and you can get out of it at any time, so why would we not want to lock it in for 5 years? If we're gonna use it, we want to keep the price, because this price is low, I'm very sure, because I got them to agree to waiving the setup fees by getting it in. They're just trying to get people on to this new product, so they are making deals. So I got them to lock it in for 5 years, and I got them to waive the setup fees.
You answered all my questions. Thank you.
Any others? All right, let's start with Nick.
Yeah, I appreciate Trustee Knutson's insight as to how the citizens can get into that system and also, you know, see what's going on in the books. So I think that's a plus.
Thank you, Nick. Ken?
Well, we definitely want to improve transparency, and I assume this would be searchable.
Yes, definitely.
That's one problem that I had as a reporter, having to search, to have to go through it visually. Also, how do you see this, I know audit time is a really stressful time for you, Cindy. How do you see this affecting the audit process?
I don't think that this will particularly have any impact on an audit, except for it will, the historical numbers will already be there, but audit-wise, they're already there. So I don't see it impacting. They are coming out with another module in the future that is CAFR, which is basically our audit report with statistics. It's the very basic explanation of a CAFR. It's much more than that, but they are working toward that, and I think that module could be extremely helpful at audit time, and it would clear one of our weaknesses. But this particular product won't have much impact on the audit. It's strictly on the budget and budget to actual side.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I have one. I was also incredibly impressed going through this system and watching the tutorials that they gave. My question is this going to help you do monthly financials and presentations to the board?
As far as it will supply, I'll supply the data, so up to the supplying the data will be the same, but after that, you will have the dashboard, the graphs, and that stuff to look at that you're not, that's very, very time consuming for me to produce. Those are not simple to produce at this point, though it will make them more simple to provide. And then it will be online, so it'll be the same interactive. You'll be able to drill down and go over it, over the graph, and see what each, more detail as you choose, as much detail as you choose to look at.
So that when we were looking at monthly financials, we would basically have a link that we would go in and look at the monthly stuff?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Anything from the public? Seeing, yes, Christine.
So the total cost is right here at $6,870. Is that a year for this program?
That is, I believe that's the correct number. Yes, but it is annual.
It is annual, that's 7,000 roughly. And
Yes.
it's the waiving of the 2,400.
Yes.
And are other towns this size online with this program that you know of that?
They are growing very rapidly with small communities. I don't know, I can't tell you how many people are on it at this time.
Okay, now, are we proposing to do a motion to purchase this evening? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to purchase the Clear Glove system.
I'd like to move that we purchase their ClearGlove system as Cindy has outlined for a waived setup fee and for an annual fee guaranteed over 5 years of $68 to $70.
Second? Karen, is that a second?
I'm just waiting to hear Bill.
I didn't hear Bill. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We have a new auditing system, or will shortly. All right.
Booking.
Booking, I'm sorry, I'm not a financial whiz. All right, moving on. Employee health insurance renewal. So we have figures that were given to us in our boxes, as well as what was included in the packet. I don't know that we want to do a motion quite yet. I think what we need is some discussion and information. Corinne or Cindy?
This will be both, I'm sure we'll both have input. So yes, it's that time of year again, and which is definitely a trend. Every year we update our plan, and the following year that plan is no longer available, and the then recommended and close plan that's the most similar to what the employees already have is less coverage for more money. So that's what you have in front of you again is the current silver HMO plan. It has the 8/1/2019 date with the stars asterisk by it, and the recommended, which is the, like I said, the closest you can get to what the silver HMO plan is now through our current insurance provider. I know that Cindy has worked with home loans and looked at other insurance carriers to see if there's other options or better options, and there just really isn't. So if you have any, also included in the renewal is the discussion piece about the town contribution and the amount that the town contributes. I did send out an email and included that information in the box at the request of Trustee Patterson about what the individual ranges of payout right now is for the individual employees.
Do you have anything to add to that, Cindy? Okay. Questions? Yes, Dave.
I think it was last year we approved and increased the employee share contribution. I just don't remember what the amount was. Was it 80% last year? We went to 90%. We did raise it by 10% last year. And I'm thinking that, what we're looking here is a package. I look at it as total compensation. So it's benefits and it's salaries. So we're going to have a bunch of things to look at. We're going to have to look at the amount, whether people are being paid fairly for their jobs in relation to other communities. We're going to have to look at the performance and whether people do their performances do a raise. And then we're looking at what are the benefit package costs. So we don't have a limited amount of money to throw at these things. I think what we can do tonight, my recommendation would be that we go with the most comparable health plan, but that we defer the decision about whether to increase our contribution until when we get closer, a better handle on salaries.
So you're deferring until we get farther in the budgeting process?
Well, if we need an approval for the health insurance, which we do tonight, we'll do that.
Okay.
I guess the problem is, it takes effect on employees' paychecks in August, doesn't it?
The renewal takes effect in August. The discussion piece about the increase can occur at a later date. That's the town's contribution. That doesn't change what our insurance coverage would be for the year.
We put it off.
You can't put off the renewal, but you could put off the conversation about increasing the town contribution until the discussion happens regarding the salary ranges.
But in the meantime, employees' paychecks would be impacted, is that correct?
Yes, based on the renewal.
Okay, I just want everyone to be clear about that.
Okay, other comments or questions? Michelle?
So I'd like to thank Administrator Ferguson for providing the data I requested, which was a very late request on my part, and appreciate that was available. I did not have time, unfortunately, to go through the math quite the way I had intended, but what I was hoping to look at was the actual impact on employee salaries. If we approve the increased cost of the 2021 health plan, but we do not make any change as far as the town's contribution. And based on some really rough math, I'm thinking it's going to be in the range of about $20 to $80 a month for the various employees. But I definitely need to double check that. That's a rough calculation.
Other comments? Yes, Karen.
On the other hand, if we go with the current 90% rate covered by the town, it's $11,380 difference to increase that to the 95. And, you know, we're already doing 7,000 a year here and 11,000 here. We haven't even got to the salaries yet, so I'd like to stay with the 90%.
Okay, other comments? Okay, I don't particularly have a comment on the 90%. I do believe that I'm with Dave in that I think we need to defer this decision until we actually get some figures on July and August revenues and to see how we are impacted by the COVID, lack of sales taxes in our festivals, because we may have no choice but to stay at 90%. So, can I have a motion, at least, to the very least, let's get the insurance policy? No, I think we have to buy the insurance. What we can make the decision on later as to what percentage the town will pay. So moved?
Yes, I motion that we do the renewal for the town insurance, for the employee insurance.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor, any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, anything from the public? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, let's move on to ordinance 2020-06, modification of fences, hedges, and walls. This is there were some slight changes in this, and this is the second reading. Would Michelle or Corinne or Nick like to note what the changes were? Michelle?
Thank you. So I'll note that the changes we made were based on discussion at the last meeting, and they include modifications to the review process when we're not doing a formal variance. And those modifications are that all three department heads, administration, public safety, and public works would need to sign off on a fence that is over the standard height, and that the property owner would have to provide letters of support for the deviation from their neighboring property owners. However, I would like to add that the way the ordinance is presented tonight, I'm not completely comfortable with where that language lives. If you read through it, it looks like it only applies to fences over 6 feet, and I think what now is section 5, A, B, and C, we might want to consider moving that to section 7 of the ordinance and make it clear that it applies to all variations.
Okay, what would be the process for doing that? Would we defer this to another meeting?
No, I feel like we can, introduce it and adopt it. I guess the notes that I had, it was unclear to me, and frankly, I apologize. I was under the impression that the variance process only applied to the 6'6" height, and that any other deviation would go through the standard town variance process.
Okay, so we can go ahead and pass this on second reading and just move the one section.
Right. So it definitely more discussion if needed, but to the extent that the board wants to adopt, it would be a motion to adopt the ordinance amending section 5 for the requirements A, B, and C, and placing those as the review requirements for a variance under section 7.
Okay.
Sorry, and to supply a little bit of clarification, I apologize, but we didn't have, Bo and I spent more time sending emails back and forth than we spent actually having the conversations over the last couple of weeks. It was very busy weeks. But so what the clarification is that front yard fences have a height limit usually of 4 feet, and so if they are requesting to build a front yard fence that's over the 4 feet, they would be required to follow those same mechanisms as far as signing off by those individual department heads. And the section that's specific where it talks about 6 feet 6 inches is the side fence and back of the lot fences, and that those are already at 6 feet. That's pretty high, and so if you're getting above that and the request goes above that 6 feet 6 inches, then that triggers the standard variance process.
Okay. Let's get a motion on the table and then we can have more discussion if needed.
I move that we approve the ordinance with the modification of moving section 5, A, B, and C into section 7.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. More discussion from the board. Okay, seeing none from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
Okay, I guess I'll kind of start in the middle of the ordinance, because you were just talking about the height. You know, the original ordinance, when it was in the zoning section of the code, said that corner fences in the front corner could be a maximum height of 42 inches. That was because of the model traffic code. That's a number that's been set by traffic engineers. You know, it's a national code, and they call out the average car height for when you're sitting in a car and you're looking across a corner. That's the height that they consider to be safe. So the town has raised that up 6 inches above that to appease, you know, people with dogs. So it's now 48 inches allowed by ordinance. And then additionally to that, people can get another 6 inches just by town administrator's approval. What I'm not seeing here is the same kind of leniency for rear yard fences, which have nothing to do with traffic safety. You know, we have a terrible deer problem in this town. And I don't know, I think people, especially now during this COVID epidemic, we're realizing the importance of being able to have your own vegetable garden and use your yard to grow your food. It's something that I've always done for the 20 years that I've lived in my property. And I would like to be able to protect my tomatoes in the summertime, because there are deer that come through all year round. A deer fence is like a 99% invisible fence. It's something that you can't see through. but it absolutely needs to be higher than 6 feet. 6 feet, 6 inches isn't enough. And for deer fencing, you need a minimum of 7 feet and potentially up to 8 feet. It's not something that would impact your neighbor. And I just don't see how, I feel uncomfortable that this great leniency was given to front yard fences, but there's no consideration to how people can use their rear yards and protect it. I mean, we're not just talking about dogs, we're talking about deer. So I'm a little bit disappointed with that. That there's not more of an approval process where you don't have to go to the town and spend $250 to ask permission, or you might or might not get that granted. The other major concern that I have that I tried to express last meeting was you're regulating land use outside of the zoning code in this ordinance. This ordinance was removed from the land use regulations and put into the building regulations. The International Building Code has absolutely no oversight over fences unless they're over 8 feet tall. So this actually has nothing to do with the building of structures. It has to do with the placement, the height, the bulk, the density of fences, hedges, and walls on people's property. And that's absolutely a land use issue. It belongs in the zoning code. So the concern I have is the second whereas here on the recital. It says, pursuant to CRS 31-23-301, the town has the power to regulate buildings, other structures for the purposes of promoting health, safety, and general welfare of the community. If you go to Title 31-23-301, it exists within the zoning section of the state statutes. And I don't think that it's appropriate to take zoning rules in the state statute and apply them to ordinance outside of the universe of zoning. This is not a zoning ordinance, and I don't think it's appropriate to take a zoning statute and apply it to an ordinance that's not in the zoning code. I don't know if this would stand up in court. I know when Mr. Nerlin first removed that Ken Knight's request, the board removed these ordinances from the zoning code. 31-23-301 was not used as a whereas to enable this. There's also a section here where it refers to chapter 16, the zoning chapters, to identify the setback areas in the property. I think for clarity, those areas should be taken and specifically mentioned in this code that's outside of the zoning code, so people aren't confusing the two sections of our ordinance. Because land use regulations have a completely different way of amending them or changing them. They have to go through a public review and noticing process. And general ordinances do not need that. So that's my main concern about this. I can understand wanting to regulate the height of things, dividing division fences, but when you start moving into people's property, I really think it turns into a land use issue. So I kind of rambled a little. Height of rear yard fences so people can protect from deer. One other thing to say here. I saw another ordinance. This was maybe interesting, and I'm sorry I didn't present this to the committee. I just kind of stumbled on it again today. On section 7, number 2, any section of an overheight fence in the primary street setback shall be less than 50% solid over its entire area. That's actually pretty, solid actually, 50% when you think of it, especially in that taller portion. And I just thought, just to think about it, I saw some wording, it actually referred to deer fencing, but it said, their description was 80% of surface is unobstructed to both light and air when viewed perpendicular to the plane of the fence. So when you look at a fence that's 50%, but you're kind of looking at it this way, it's really solid. But if you require the fence to be like wire hog panel or certain wire meshes, it's actually quite transparent when you're looking at it perpendicularly. But I know at one time trustee Bettinger had said that, back when the 36-inch height fence was established, that fences can really look solid when you're just walking down close next to them. So I was just saying, not for the lower fences, but anything above, you might look at that transparency standard a little bit more closely, just for safety, especially if it's on the street. So thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Your concerns are duly noted, and at some point, we may be looking at zoning codes, and who knows, this may go back into that. But it's a matter for further discussion at a later time. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second, unless there is no more discussion. Yes, Michelle.
Mayor Backernick, I would like to comment related to a couple of things from public comment, if that's appropriate at this time.
Sure.
Regarding the rear fences, backyard fences, I think that's an excellent point. I think as long as we're changing the ordinance, we should probably get it right. So I would personally be in favor of modifying the language so that the process we've developed with the 3 department heads and the letters from neighbors would apply to rear fences as well, without that 6'6" height restriction. Similar to front yard fences, we would make that at the discretion of the town, just to provide that flexibility for things like deer fences. Second comment on that, I also heard, sorry, I'm reviewing my notes. Regarding IBC oversight, I believe that's a valid comment. The version of the International Building Code we use now does not regulate fences under 8 feet tall. I don't know if that's true in future versions of building code, and this is why I was comfortable leaving that language in place, because there may be a time when that building code applies to the fences we have, and we'll need to honor that code.
Okay. Well, would you like, can we amend, all right, here's a point of protocol. Can we amend the motion to make the 6'6" above the 6'6" limit on back fences go by the same process as the front fences?
So, I guess I was a little bit confused, because if we turn to section 7, it reads, the town administrator may grant a permit for fence that exceeds the maximum height upon the application in specific cases and subject to the compliance with the following standards. And that's where we had the suggestion that we would move from section 5, A, B, and C, which is that sections 1 through 4 have been complied with. The administrator, public safety department, public works department sign off on the height of the excess fence, and all property owners adjoining the property owner have filed a letter of support from the deviation. So to me, that seems like a standard that would be set forth, and then the authority that would be granted to the town administrator under that area. So I don't see it as limiting to the rear setback, the rear fences itself, but it would just be the variance on the height for wherever the fence might be located on the property.
Okay, so front fences or back fences would go through the same process. Yes.
Just to make that clear, could we remove the statement in number 5 that says not more than 6 feet 6 inches?
Yeah, I think you can, if you do a motion, to amend the motion.
Okay.
All right. Would someone like to amend the main motion?
I would like to amend the main motion to strike not more than 6 feet 6 inches from item number 5 in the ordinance.
Second. You have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Anything from the public? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the amendment to the main motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. Yes, Karen.
Now, to offer an answer to your question clerk, I can tell you it's very difficult to track and very difficult to report for a historical record when you amend an amendment. But because the amendment was part of the main motion, that didn't apply. So, you know how there are times when a motion is made and then someone amends that motion and then someone wants to make an amendment to the amendment, but the amendment hasn't been voted and accepted yet. That is the thing that we're trying to stop. So when you make a motion and included in that motion is the amended language, that's the main motion. There's nothing additional to vote on that's now being tacked on. So that may not be, that was extremely clear either. But
No. I'm curious as to what we're voting on.
So you cannot make a motion to amend an amendment that hasn't been voted on.
So we haven't voted on the first amendment, which is what?
In this situation, you did it perfectly correct, which is why I didn't say anything. Because there was one motion made, which included the amendment, which you can do. You can make a motion to accept this ordinance with the following amendments. That's one motion. The amendments are already in it. If you had made a motion to accept the fence ordinance as drafted, and then made a motion to amend it, you have to vote on that amendment before you move on to another amendment.
Okay. So we have the amendment voted on, so now we can vote on the ordinance?
You already did. You're good. You're done.
Oh.
I was just providing that explanation that you asked for in the middle of all of that.
One of these days I'll get this sucker straight. Thank you, Corinne.
Oh, yes, I was wrong. You did vote on her amendment to remove the 6 foot 6 inches, so you do have to do your.
Okay.
Sorry.
At least I'm tracking on some level.
You did track. I was just trying to answer your question that you have in the middle of all of that I didn't answer.
Okay. So now, when we have a motion, we have an approved amendment. So we're voting on the amended motion. Is everybody clear on it? Okay. I'm going to take a chance and say any further discussion? None? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion finally carries. Thank you, everyone. All right. Next on the agenda is ordinance 2020 to be determined, modification of municipal code regarding appointment of officers. I already gave my spiel on this one, guys, so we know what this is about. Can we get a motion on the table and then we'll do a discussion?
Nobody. I move that we approve the ordinance.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, do we have a second? Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Okay, seeing none from the board, anything from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
I was just looking at some of the wording here. On the fourth whereas, where it says, appointed officers of the town shall hold their respective offices, blah, 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 blah. That's actually pursuant to 31-4-304. And, I mean, I don't know if you want to mention it there, but I guess what my reservation is here is down farther on the section 2 amendment to the code on the very bottom. You refer to 31-4-401, which has to do with the swearing in of the officers. But state statute 31-4-304 on the very end is the section that talks about the new officers officers being appointed. Here on papers I have shuffled here. And no appointment of any officer shall continue beyond 30 days after compliance with section 31-4-30401. And the only reason I'm saying is it would be nice to have the statute that is making this appointment necessary in here somewhere, just for educational purposes, if nothing else, because technically you don't need to have this ordinance at all. This is a statutory requirement. So it's not that the board wishes to do this. This is a statutory requirement and it has to be done. I'm rambling a little bit, but I was thinking, well, why do we have this ordinance? And we used to have a lot more people that were appointed. And I think at that time, this ordinance was necessary because there were officers that we were appointing that weren't required by statute. And, you know, it's helpful to have an ordinance in that case. And then when Jane Berry came on, and we just limited it to the statutory appointments as the ones that needed to be reappointed. But, so technically this is an ordinance that just kind of clarifies that there's a statute that we have to follow. And so I was just saying it would be nice if somewhere in there you could say, following the town following state statute 31-4-304, you know, shall appoint officers, whatever. And I sorry I didn't come to you with wording to make it easier for you, but I'm just saying it would be nice if we had a statutory reference to this ordinance so people know exactly where to look if they try to look it up themselves.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Yes, Bill?
Well, with that statement, Suzanne, where should it be included?
Okay, Bill, could you take off your mask? I can't even understand.
Well, you know, sorry, with that statement, where should it be included in?
That's a good question. Let me see.
What about in that, there's whereas?
I have a suggestion for you. I'm referring back to Town Ordinance 2-3-10, appointed officers. And it's actually Part A. It says the following officers of the town shall be appointed by a majority of the vote of the Board of Trustees, town clerk, town treasurer, town attorney, and municipal judge. And I know it's changing the ordinance a little bit, but maybe it could say, as per state statute, 31-4-304, the following officers of the town. Well, it doesn't apply to the officers, it has to do with their terms, so that's P and B, isn't it?
Yeah, this is just a change to B, so A exists already, which enumerates the officers.
And that's a different part of the statute. So
That's correct.
31-4-304, that last sentence in 31 is the one that says that they shall be, until.
That's taking the oath, and that's already in the existing provision of the code.
31-4-304. Do we mention it anywhere?
Not in the code currently.
Okay, and that was my concern because it seemed like when you read the code, the references to the statutes that were cited were brought forward, and we had to kind of dig a little bit further, saying, oh, there's this other part of state statute that we're following too. And this is why it's 2 years, because the section that we were looking at didn't seem to reference that. But 31-4-401 is only about people being sworn in. Has nothing to do with 31 I can read you the whole thing, but it's kind of lengthy.
Instead of reading the whole thing, if there's a place where we want to insert it, let's insert it. Otherwise, we're going to let it go.
Okay, so I'll read the very last sentence here of 31-4-304. And it says the election of officers shall be at the regular election. That's if you decide to elect them. And no appointment of any other officer shall continue beyond 30 days after compliance with section 31-4-401, the oath of office, by the members of the succeeding Board of Trustees. So that's the pivotal part of the state statute that's telling us that we have to reappoint every 2 years unless you want to have an ordinance that says we are electing these by the public. So I just was hoping that somewhere in this year, 31-4-304 could be acknowledged. And I should have come a little bit more prepared as to where to put it in, where
Okay, unless somebody wants to make an amendment to add something, okay, Michelle?
I'd like to move that we amend the ordinance, section 2, part B, where it says, in compliance with CRS 31-4-401, change that to 31-4-304.
Bill?
Yeah. Frankly, I don't think that you want to do that. No offense. But if there's an amendment to be made, I would suggest that, and I think that we can introduce tonight and then it can come back for adoption. But we look at including section 2310 of the municipal code to reference the appropriate statute that enumerates the officers to be appointed, 31-4-304. So it would be an amendment to 2310. So the following officers, in accordance with let me just get my citation here, 31-4-304 of the town shall be appointed by a majority vote of the members of the trustees, by a majority member of the board of trustees, clerk, treasurer, attorney, municipal judge.
I withdraw my motion, and am I replacing it with a motion, Attorney Merlin, or are we just bringing this back at the next meeting?
Maybe we want to just bring this back at the next meeting. I don't want to get this too convoluted here.
Okay, then my motion is withdrawn.
Okay, so, do we need a motion to bring it back to the next thing, or do we just let ride?
I think I'll move that we defer this till the next meeting for more consultation with town attorney.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have a second on that? All right. Did we have a motion to pass this?
We have a motion.
Okay, so we need to vote on that motion before we vote on Bill's motion. So we do have a motion on the table to pass ordinance 2020 TBD. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, that motion fails. Now, we have Bill's motion, which is to bring this back at the next meeting. And we have a second on that? Okay. Discussion? All right. Yes,
So, to be clear, what I'm hearing from the board, and based on a point, and I think it's a good one from Ms. Watson, you guys want to reference, the board wants to reference 31-4-304, enumerating the officers for appointment, so there's not a confusion in the future in terms of who's in and who's out for appointment. Is that correct?
I think we have consensus, yep.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion carries. We will see that in 2 weeks again. All right, next item on the agenda is the Chief of Police Memorandum of Understanding. Let's get a motion on the table, and then we shall go from there.
I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with Chief of Police.
Is there a second?
All right.
Discussion. Michelle.
So I really appreciate the work that the Personnel Committee has done on this, along with Mayor Backren and staff. I think it is our best way forward at this time, but I'm still not completely comfortable with this as a long-term reporting structure. I feel like it's a little bit messy. Not just the conflict of interest, but we've created a situation where one department head reports to the town administrator, the other department head does not, and reports to the mayor, so the mayor has become a staff supervisor in one sense, but is not a staff supervisor for the other department heads. So my hope is that we can revisit this down the road, but I don't see I don't have a solution. I don't see a good solution at this time beyond adopting the memorandum and then putting this maybe in our parking lot for future discussion.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other discussion? Yes, Dave.
I wouldn't agree with the trustees' comments because the chief of police in a lot of municipalities report directly to the board because it's a more sensitive position. It has a lot of impact on citizens, and boards are more accountable to citizens. Where if they and this is the trouble a lot of major cities have right now is their chief of police nebulously reports, and so there isn't much accountability like there is with the sheriff who's elected. So the only change we've had in Paonia is because of one town manager wanting to control more things. The rest of the time that chief of police position was reporting directly to the board, and I really think that's where it belongs because there's so much public accountability with that, especially now. So I just want to make that comment.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, public? Yes, Suzanne?
I find under the introduction, item number 5, where it says the Paonia chief of police historically reported to the mayor until Ms. Berry was hired as town administrator. I called Ron Rowell today. He was the former mayor. He was also on the board, and he was a law enforcement professional, so he is historically, so he was always very interested in this. And he said that the chief of police never reported directly to the mayor. And that's why we have the committee system. And, they would try to kind of recruit people with some police experience or, on the public safety committee. But, committees can never make decisions, obviously. Decisions have to be made as a board. We do have an ordinance that says that I didn't like the most recent one. I don't think it changed, the police ordinance changed, but I wrote it down. Ordinance 2-3-10 is, historically he was listed as an appointed official, but then we have ordinance 2-5-30. And I don't know if he changed that under 10 night, but it says chief of police appointment and duties. The board of trustees, upon recommendation of the town administrator, shall appoint a chief of police. And then it says, chief of police shall render such accounts of the police department and his duties and receipts as may be required by the board of trustees, and keep the records of his or her office open to inspection of the board of trustees at any time. And then he also must perform other such duties as may be required by the board of trustees. So I think we have an ordinance that actually does have the board of trustees very involved with the chief of police. So what I find a little bit messy, and I understand we need to have him reporting to somebody, and board members can't make decisions on their own. So perhaps that's why we're giving it to the mayor, but it's making it a little bit even more confusing in my mind because the board is saying things, but does the mayor report to the trustees at this point? Let me just say, my concern, first of all, with this historical note, it's not accurate, and sometimes when you pass MOUs, all of a sudden, you documented history of the town, because this is the only place you've ever seen it. But it's actually, it's apparently never been that way, unless you can dig up an MOU.
I can provide alternate information. I have to go back and look deeper, but I can tell you that for the period of time that I was on the board, the way that office always functioned was the chief of police reported to the board of trustees, and via the policy, the mayor, who was Mayor Neil Schwiegerman at the time, did the daily supervising, but they did report directly to the board of trustees.
Well, we didn't have a town administrator at that time.
We did not have a town administrator at the time.
And Neil used to be on the police department. But it was the way that one was worked, but it worked for a short period of time because it's a big burden to put on anybody who wants to run for mayor, to think that now they have to manage a police department too. So it might be a temporary fix, but, that's all. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, any further discussion? Yes, Dave?
Nature police work a lot of times requires very quick action. We discussed this in a previous meeting, that we needed to make sure that our police chief could get an answer when we needed it and not have to go to a committee or an entire board to get answers, because a lot of times it's very time constrained. So that's why we chose the mayor.
And the police does report to the board at every board meeting, so the board is informed. And of course, if anything were to come up in our discussions between the chief and I, then I would of course bring it to the board. So, all right, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Okay, we're on to town administrator draft job description and procedure for evaluation. Dave or Karen, would you like to take the lead on this?
Well, thank you for the assignments. We've tried to do our best in compiling the information. I really thank Karen for all the work that she's put into it. But we took the job description as best we could and make a couple of changes to it to make sure there was an inclusion of the clerk, and then also suggested criteria for evaluation at 3 and 6 months. So that's what you have before you.
This Exhibit A, interim town administrator, shouldn't be in here, right?
Oh, yeah.
The draft?
I included in the packet the job description as it stands, that was included with my contract, and then the modifications so that you have them for comparison.
Okay. Okay. So, is this going to be a motion again? Or just, do we want? You want?
Let's give it a chance.
Okay, then let's go ahead and get a motion on the table to accept the draft job description and the evaluation procedure.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proposed job description and the evaluation procedure for 3 and 6 months for the town manager, town administrator.
All right, do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Michelle.
The newer job description still includes language regarding assisting in the search, assessment, and retention of a full-time administrator, and I think we're not doing that right now.
No, we're not doing that right now.
There's also a typo. HIPAA is HIPAA.
Oh.
And then just a question on the evaluation. I like the format. I wonder whether the administrator will do a self-evaluation using the same format, and if that would be provided. Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Finally, Ben, you're out. Western Slope Conservation Center. You should not have had your item moved, huh?
I failed to factor in the executive session.
Will we be able to get through this in 15 minutes, or do we want to extend the meeting maybe another 15 minutes?
Maybe we should go ahead and extend the meeting for another 15 minutes in case there's any deep discussion on this letter.
I move that we extend the meeting to 9:45.
Do I hear a second?
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? All right, meeting is extended to 9:45. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the last board meeting, I came and kind of introduced the topic. I came back with a letter. I also included the letters from the town previously submitted 2016 and 2019. In the interest of time, I feel like we could open it for discussion. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but, yeah.
Okay, let's have some discussion. Anybody have questions for Ben? Comments on the letter? Michelle?
I support the letter as written. I would like to bring up again the suggestion that we formalize our position on any issues where we're providing frequent letters.
Okay, maybe we can put that on the agenda for next meeting. And if someone would like to write a draft proposal as to what our positions are, that would be really good. Okay. Does anybody else, any questions for Ben on the letter? Any changes, whatever? Go ahead, Dave.
I just think that the letter is well drafted and a good summary of what we really have said in the past, and just brings the measure forward again. So I appreciate the work on that, and it's less than 5 pages. I like that.
He was directed to do that, remember? Okay, well then, if there's no further discussion, let's get a motion on the table to accept Ben's letter, and we'll get it signed and sent off.
I move that we accept the draft that's provided by Ben to the board, and that we authorize the mayor to sign on our behalf.
Do I have a second? Okay, any more discussion? Okay, anything from the public? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Well, Ben, long wait for a quick thing. If you will get a copy, I think Corinne has a copy, so yeah, we will get that signed and sent off. Thank you very much for all your work. Sure. Appreciate it much. All right. That takes care of our regular agenda. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We have 3 meeting minutes and 1 liquor license renewal. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Just one question for the chief, please. Is there any reason why we should not approve the liquor amendment or the liquor license approved? No.
Okay, thank you. Any others? All right. Dave, you got called.
I noticed that the Riverbank is moving along pretty fast in negotiations that are not including the council. And one thing that I want to make really clear is that I stood really firm about trails in that place. If that private property is developed without any kind of access for trails, that really limits the ability of us to provide a very nice trail from River Park all the way to the library. So I want to make sure, I don't know how to do this, but I don't want those negotiations to go very far without the owner understanding how strong, at least I feel, about the trails. And maybe we need to make a motion, you know, on where the board stands, because we're talking about...
We're talking about something that is not on the agenda.
Right.
And so
So how do I, that's what I'm saying. Looking at the consent agenda, it reminded me of how far along that is going on the discussion with her. How do we, as the council, intercede on that to make sure that we get what we need on those negotiations? Because I'm afraid it's going to go through legal and all these other things. Next thing we know, we're stuck with something.
Bo?
So I think first and foremost, we have to consider the consent agenda, but subsequent to that, I'm happy to weigh in. There's not been one application submitted yet on Riverbank. So it needs to go to planning, it needs to go to the Board of Trustees. There's nothing that at this point in time is for review. So, I mean, I would frankly take the opposite position that the Riverbank subdivision process is moving forward pretty quickly and has not had any sort of approval.
Okay, so we have a motion and second on the consent agenda. If there's no further discussion, yes, Michelle.
I just wanted to share for the benefit of the public, there are a couple of typos in the minutes, and those have been corrected administratively.
Okay. All in favor of the consent agenda? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, disbursements, treasurer's report?
Madam Mayor, we've reviewed the payroll and disbursements of the Finance and Personnel Committee, and I'd like to advise the board to be notified that our audit has been filed and accepted by the state of Colorado. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, disbursements? Can we have a motion to accept disbursements?
I move that we accept payment of accounts payable in the amount of $94,317.79. A loan payment to U.S. Bank of $86,928.46. A transfer to the Summit account of $50,000. Transfer to the payroll account of $18,628.02. Payroll taxes of $686.12. Payroll taxes for the second payroll of $7,392.62. And payment of direct deposit payroll of $18,628.02. And payment of the Chase credit card, $660.78.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Bill?
I had several questions. One was the dairy specialist, but I believe that is for chlorine.
Yes.
Is that a new vendor that we're utilizing now, that we haven't utilized in the past? Well, I know it's but the reason that we have, but will we change vendors?
We did several, we did several, maybe a year or so ago.
Okay.
We changed from, Wilbur Ellis to dairy specialist, because it's significantly less expensive.
Then you change the name and everything.
Okay, the second question concerns Nash Petroleum. I realize it's buying fuel, conscious, but how many people have cars to utilize that fuel?
4?
Do we have a way of tracking those purchases?
Yes.
Plaster Artisan for $635.
That's to repair the wall in Police Park.
Okay, and then the wind water for $10,938.
That was the vault repair for the roof.
That was the what?
The repair on those, is that the 10,938 you're asking? Yeah. And there was a new vault valve put on, O Road for those, repairs of leaks.
So this included the $25,000.
Yes.
So in fact, the leak, the part for the contract is $15,000. And is that correct? I read that correctly?
So a portion of this is included, not the entirety, because it's also included the addition of a secondary valve that Travis added so that when the pressure is increasing to a point that it is becoming precarious, that it then triggers a second pressure reducing valve. So if one fails now in that vault, there's a secondary mechanism that will stop the pressure from hammering the line and causing the break.
Any other questions? Yeah, Michelle, you go first this time.
Okay, I have 3. There's a payment to Delta County something. It's cut off on the
That was our contribution to One Delta County that we approved.
Thank you. Morris Monument?
This, I'm glad you brought that up. This is part of the minor wall, and what we heard from our treasurer that I'm very concerned about, and I'm sure Karen also shares this concern, is we're finding that that project came in $45,000 over what it was supposed to be. So there's a concern about what's happening with the minor wall and how much money came in and how much we had to spend for the engraving.
Right, and I don't know where those contributions stand today.
Well, I think we heard from the treasurer, if I got this right, is that the contributions are accounted for, and what we're now paying for the engraving is $45,000 more.
I think the number is 35,000.
I'm sorry, 35,000. And then the other caution is, when we went through this, is that at least on legal fees, if we continue on this track, we're going to be excessively over budget on legal fees this year.
Did you have another question, Michelle?
I do. For roof excavating, I'm wondering which projects are included in those. It looks like we have 2 payments to group in this round.
First one is a water leak, and the second one, the 31,006, is that sewer line. When Travis mentioned the one going underneath North Fork Gunnison, that's the completion of that project.
Anything else?
Just to follow up on the Morris Monument issue, do we have is that something that needs to come before the board as an agenda item, or do we have any kind of plan to get the budget under control with that?
I haven't talked to Mr. Bradford yet. It would be worth a phone call.
All right, any others? Questions, concerns? All right, hearing none, anything from the public? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, we are on to the mayor's report. I only have one thing to report. I have been in touch with CML about Bob's Rules of Order, and they have a lawyer that's looking into it, and I will hear back from them hopefully sometime this week. And we do have an ordinance on the books that say we have to go by Robert's rules. So that will come back again. All right, other committee reports, finance and personnel.
We will be meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock to sign checks. Anyone that wants to observe that process is more than welcome.
Woo! All right, government affairs, public safety.
Yeah, our last meeting was Wednesday, June 24th at 2 o'clock. In attendance was Town Administrator Ferguson, Trustee Edison, myself, and Chief Ferguson was under the weather and unable to attend. We also had 2 members from the public attend, which was really nice, you know. We discussed the marijuana ballot language, which we sent over to Attorney Merlin. And I understand we need a first vote in July on whether or not we are to participate on that. So, actually, a question to the board is, do we need a special meeting to discuss this with the public?
I believe we've already, what we did tonight was say we were going to participate in the election, which is the marijuana question. So we're okay on the timeline so far.
Fine with that, okay. All right. We discussed food trucks. We have a listening session scheduled for Wednesday, July 29th. Administrator Ferguson will publicize the meeting starting this week. That meeting will be at 4 o'clock, and that will be publicized on the website, KBNF, BCI, High Country News, and
Yes, currently it is on the town website. It was linked on the town's Facebook page, and flyers
Good, thank you for that. Chief Ferguson mentioned earlier in his report that he has a possible kennel arrangement for the dogs at large, which was discussed. Let's see, the GAPS committee is planning a listening session for building inspections. We're planning on hosting that mid-August, possibly on the 12th. Again at 4 o'clock. That has not been finalized, but again, it will be publicized similar to what we did with the other listening meeting. Am I done?
No, that's my most say you should go to bed.
Also, Administrator Ferguson is working on whether or not we can accept anonymous feedback from the town website. I think we did have an answer to that. It is possible, but there are some concerns about that. Anything you need to add to that?
No, I think I'll wait till we can follow up at our next meeting.
Okay. And we had a visitor complaint, which I'm sure every trustee received a call on, about a traffic ticket. And all I can say is the signage on Grand Street is being reviewed by the staff. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, July 29th at 2 p.m. This meeting is open to the public, and they're definitely encouraged to attend. That's it.
Anything to add, Michelle? Okay, thank you very much, Mick. Hey, nice to have your first full report. Show guy. All right, next, Public Works Utilities Facilities. Tammy?
We have nothing to report. We were unable to meet before the meeting. We are meeting again on the 23rd, I believe, at 9 a.m. We'll have a report after that meeting.
Thank you very much. Space to Create, nothing. Tree Board? Tammy?
Yeah, it's just a little thing. The tree board held a sick tree day on Saturday due to a little error in scheduling of my work. I was unable to go. Very sorry. I did get just a little message from Paula, who is the chair of the tree board. She said that 14 homeowners signed up for the 20 slots they had available. So it was full. They had a full schedule. There were several people, Jim Leeser, Bob Sussman, Gary Mazzano, and Family Tree Board Secretary John Valentine all gave out a lot of information, valuable information. And Vince Urbino was not able to attend due to the state Forest Service's the state Forest Service's COVID restrictions, but hopefully next year he will be able to do this. They are calling it a huge success and are hoping that they will be able to make this once again an annual event. And I don't know when they meet next, but other than that, nothing else to report.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. All right. I think if anybody has any last words? No? All right, well then, oh yes, Tammy.
If you get a chance to drive by 3rd and Orchard and check out Deborah Spiegel's fence, it's awesome. And I went and pulled in to the street to pull out, and the visibility is excellent. It's a beautiful fence, so it's worth driving by.
All right, well, on that note, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for being such active participants. Have a lovely evening, what's left of it.